Welcome to Data Security Over Coffee. That's DSOC to those in the know.
Where the only thing more dangerous than a zero-day exploit is Chad from accounting clicking on every single email attachment.
From password post-its hidden under keyboards
to that one guy who keeps using password 123 despite our 47 security memos. We're here to talk about the threats you never knew you should be terrified of.
I'm Dr. Joe Harford.
And I'm Angie. Have you tried turning it off and on again, Singer Keating?
Bringing you the latest in cybersecurity nightmares and risk management drama.
Because somewhere out there, a hacker is trying to get into your company's data.
And Karen from HR just clicked on another free iPhone pop-up. This is Data Security Over Coffee, DSOC, where every episode is a penetration test you didn't ask for. Wow. Huh? You thought that was kind of cool, didn't you, Andrew?
That was very cool. Very impressive.
That's the most impressive thing I ever get to do in my entire job. It really is. Okay, so we're having trouble streaming onto LinkedIn. This may be an issue. I have no idea what any of that means. So it says we're live. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. It'll be recorded and we'll just keep on plugging away. I have no idea. But Angie is going to be responsible for Data Security Over Coffee, getting the guest, scheduling it, and making all this technology happen in the future. So this will be my last broadcast.
Last time I checked, sales and marketing is your sandbox. So that's where DSOC falls. It ain't coming in my sandbox, buddy.
Oh, man. Anyway, okay. So to be serious, Andrew, thanks for deciding to take time out of your busy day to hang out with two crazy people.
You're welcome.
I know who you are. Angie knows who you are. But the 125 people that are currently watching do not. So why don't you tell people who you are? I won't make you spell out all of those letters that are normally after your last name on LinkedIn. You're like the only guy on LinkedIn where your letters actually wrap to the second line.
Thanks for pointing that out. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Oh.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully the audience realizes that we've known each other for a while. We have a good relationship, and I look forward to the discussion, of course, and the little jab. I like that too. I'm used to it, so keep it coming. So who am I? Andrew Ysasi. I've broad scope. Started out my career in information technology. Moved into a sales marketing role kind of late 2000s, and then went into leadership positions shortly after that, about 2010, 2011, if I recall, and have been in leadership executive roles since then. Currently the VP of Advocacy for Vital Records Control, where I mentor, educate, lobby, and volunteer on behalf of VRC to the broader information governance records management communities. I'm also an instructor at San Jose State University in their Masters of Archives and Records Administration program. Yeah, the School of Information. I've been there 5 years. I teach records management, information governance, cybersecurity, and privacy. So in a nutshell, that's what I do for work. And you may also know me from ARMA International. I'm the current treasurer for their board and also the treasurer for the ARMA International Education Foundation.
Wow. You're like super smart.
Busy guy. Smart with TBD, but busy guy.
Oh my gosh. So we were talking last month, Angie and I, about penetration testing, and one of the things I think that we have heard in the field is that, well, as long as I have a pen test, I'm okay. I don't need to worry about all this other InfoSec stuff, which goes completely and totally up Angie's neck. It drives her nuts when she hears stuff like that. You and I was fortunate enough to present with you this year at the iSigma conference, along with Jenny from CSR. Had a really good time.
Yeah, that was a great panel.
And I think that when Angie and I were talking about it, we don't buy that. And that's why we talk about a number of things outside of pen testing and vulnerability management. So maybe this is the good thing or the bad thing about letting me be in charge, but I'm just going to ask some questions. So for those in the audience, now 200, by the way, I think it's because Andrew's here. What actually is a pen test? I know that sounds like basic to us, but for those people that may be watching, maybe it's not basic. What is it?
Sure. Well, historically, a penetration test is a report that is done preferably by a third party on an organization's infrastructure and their vulnerability as it pertains to, in most cases, digital assets or information assets, but could also spill into some of the physical side of things as well. And that report would then produce recommendations of how to patch, fix, close the gaps on the vulnerabilities that report found. That's really the simple explanation and definition of what a pen test would be. Modern day pen tests include that, but also we see that they're becoming more continuous or automated. But that doesn't mean that it's resolving some of the issues or concerns around the scope around pen tests. And I know we're going to get to that, but that's the short answer to your question of what a pen test is historically and what it is today.
Okay. So Angie, when we go places and we meet with people and they say things like, oh, well, I have a pen test and I'm okay and everything's fine. Why does that drive you crazy?
It drives me crazy because I think that they have a false sense of security. I think that when I hear that answer, I know that I'm probably in a situation where I'm going to have to do some education around business impact analysis, and that a penetration test is just one small piece of an overall information security strategy. It is just one small piece of a technical testing mechanism, but unless there's business impact analysis, a risk analysis performed on a regular basis, ongoing vulnerability scanning with an active documented vulnerability management program around it, you're really not getting the full picture. Sometimes the smart aleck answer is, yeah, you had a pen test, but so did every company you've read about in the newspaper that had a massive cybersecurity incident. They all had pen tests too. So if you're relying on having had a penetration test and thinking that now we're all good, that's the kind of client that keeps me up at night. That's the kind of client I'm worried they're going to be calling us having a breach when we haven't even been able to talk with them about a scope of services or whether or not they're even a good fit for us as a client, because they're just a security incident waiting to happen.
So I'm the least technological on the call. In fact, most people would say I'm challenged being able to use my phone. It's true. So am I correct in saying that when somebody gets a pen test done, that is a snapshot in time? It's done over some period of time, correct?
Yeah, it's a snapshot in time of when the testing takes place.
Right.
But I'm not going to steal Andrew's thunder. It's only a snapshot of whatever has been put in scope. we've seen clients where they craft the scope in such a way that they don't even include some of the most important technology assets in their business. So it's only a snapshot of whatever's in scope. So Andrew, I think letting you talk about the importance of scope right from the outset is super important.
Yeah, you had touched on business impact analysis, or one could even refer to understanding your critical workflows for your organization, whether it's pertaining to what you're producing or the services you're providing to get that to be all the systems and the functions to support that, or if it's a regulatory driver saying we need to comply with X privacy law, and we need to make sure that PII is protected in these types of workflows or with our employees. And those discussions I find are best in preparing that scope for that penetration test, whether it's a point in time pen test or you have that continuous automated penetration test solution to monitor that, because it's that important. The challenge would be if you don't do that, then you have, let's say, organization A or IT employee B who says, I want to do a penetration test on our Azure instances. Okay, let's point everything to our Azure instances. Now here's the report saying these are all the things we have to do to protect our Azure instances. And that is, in some cases, we could say, oh, good, we've checked it. You have, but you potentially omitted your Amazon S3 buckets, your applications that feed that data or that use that data, human beings that are involved with the tools and our endpoints that could be affected by that are all omitted from that because you didn't have that discussion with the organization and IT of really what your goal of that test is.
Absolutely.
So sometimes when I sit down with clients and have a conversation, and this will be the very first time that we're introducing the conversation around information security, and we want to talk with them about a security risk analysis. And I have on more than one occasion had someone come back to me and say, you know what, I meaning the organization, we don't really need to worry about that because we had a pen test done. So if you're Andrew or Angie, if you're in the room with me and you hear somebody say that, besides having the top of my head go explode, what's the comeback? Like, what's the educated response to help them walk through the conversation to better educate them and better make them aware of what's really at risk here?
And do you want to go at that first, or you want me to take a stab at it?
You're our guest, so I'm always going to give you the first word, and at the end, I'm going to give you the last word.
All right. Well, thank you. Very kind. So what do you say to someone who doesn't have a pen test? Correct? That's the question. My response would be, well, you've taken the right step by having us or whomever in the room to talk about this, because there's obviously concern, and I would want to know what the driver was for that. Why did you bring this in? To get an understanding of what the culture of that organization is around risk. Is it they're just looking to check a box, or is it we want to do an overhaul because we recently had an incident?
So let me, if I can interrupt you. So yeah. I'll do this as interactively. I'll use a real live example that happened to me 2 months ago.
Okay.
A current client of ours referred us to a peer. And the reason why we were referred is because the peer had gone every year and had an annual pen test done. Their cyber insurance company came back to them and said, not that you have to get a security risk analysis performed, but we would encourage you to consider it. Okay, so now you got some more context. I go to the meeting, referred in, very positive environment. And the person says to me, shared the cyber insurance piece with me and said, but you know what? We get a pen test done every year. Why do you want me to spend more money on a security risk analysis? I mean, I understand what the cyber insurance companies tell me, but I get this pen test thing done. So why do I have to worry? So there's kind of like the lay of the land, if that makes sense to you.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I think it goes back to scope, right? And there's a reason that they brought you in is because the cybersecurity insurance folks said, you should probably have a conversation around that. And if you are not familiar with a pen test or haven't had one done in a while, I think with the current landscape right now, you're either putting a whole lot of trust in your information technology team or vendors to protect you, or you're not listening to them to help protect. And most folks who I know who are above board in IT, they're the first ones to say, look, I know I have limitations. I know our systems may have limitations. The best way to understand what those are is to go to a trusted third party to tell us what we need to do to improve, because we don't know what we don't know in many cases. You can't hire all the experts in the world to have them as employees, right? So having that conversation to say, tell me what we don't know, and put that into a report so we can make improvements, then wrap it into potentially not only does this lower your risk, but it could also help you with maybe your premium for your insurance that you're paying, because you've gone through the process of understanding what you need to protect and then actually followed up with doing that.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that, I'm really big on analogies and making comparisons for people. And I think the penetration test is akin to getting blood work annually or every 6 months, whatever it is that your doctor recommends for you. And then the deeper scans and more specialized testing, that's also what we do in penetration testing when we find something that's anomalous, or we find something where we think it's a little squishy, and maybe if we poke a little more, we can get further into your systems. We want to know more. That all is a result of going to your doctor, going to your specialist, and sitting down and talking about things like your lifestyle, your habits, your diet, your exercise. And then do you have an effective exercise program? One of the biggest things that NIST Cybersecurity Framework 1.1 to 2.0 did is it overlaid governance on top of it. Well, in this analogy, governance is me saying to my fiance, who says, I feel fine. I don't need to go to the doctor or whatever. Governance is me saying, no, you need to prove to me that you actually do this. And I want to see the test results. And then, by the way, when I see the test results and I see things are not so good in a certain area, I want to know what the plan is for how we're going to make it better. A penetration test doesn't do any of that. The penetration test is just the result of the blood work. It's the result of the X-ray or the scan. And it is a snapshot in time of a specific component. And we still need all kinds of things like policy, procedure. We need to understand our people and those workflows. Penetration testing doesn't really evaluate any of that. And that's why they're two very different things. The penetration test is one component of a bigger overall information security management program, which sits within an organization's overall risk management program. And so we're really down here at the micro level with penetration testing, when we want clients to back up and we want to talk to them about, how does the business make money? How does the business fulfill its mission? How does it fulfill its obligations to its employees, its stakeholders, everything else? Then we want to use that information to start building out that scope of, what are we going to test? How are we going to test it? How do you protect it? How do you govern how you protect it? It's all part of a much bigger package. I think if I could be queen of the world and I could set up every engagement with a client, when we first sit down to talk with them, the very first project I would want to do with a client is I would want to do an incident response plan with a tabletop exercise. And the reason that I would want to do that is because that's a great way to get the conversation started about if we came in tomorrow and couldn't do our work, what's at stake? What does it look like for us? What does it look like for our clients, our patients? And then that helps us identify those critical systems, which then helps us talk about how we govern and manage those systems. And every client, before we do a security risk analysis or before we do a penetration test, they're at risk of having a security incident, and they need to know how they're going to respond. If you don't have a security, if you don't have an incident response plan, your incident response plan is we'll just fly by the seat of our pants and do an ad hoc process. So let's talk through what that ad hoc process means right now. And that is one of the cornerstones I personally would make the very first step before we start doing anything else with a client.
Andrew, I don't know if you observed this or not, but do you realize that she did that all with one breath?
That's impressive if that's the case. That's
oh my gosh. Wow. And see, this is what I deal with. This is how I never get a word in edgewise.
I just get really passionate about.
Oh, I know.
I know that the kind of client we deal with does not have a bottomless budget. And I want them, when they work with us, to get the biggest bang for their buck, to get the most value that they possibly can get. And I think, and your cyber insurance carrier wants to know that you have an incident response plan. So let's start there, and let's use that as our get to know each other and build out all the other services around it. That's not how it happens. And that never happens. But if I could wave a magic wand, that's how I would start every engagement with every brand new client.
Andrew, tap in.
Yeah, I think the other, Angie mentioned analogy, and the other analogy I'll use is how people react post-incident, post-breach, right? And sometimes there's this amazing shift to mentalities of, oh my gosh, it's happened to us. We need to do better. And the before would be, let's put it to your home. You know, if you before was, well, I want my basement to be protected from an intruder, and only my basement. And you have a company come in and they check your door to the basement and say it's locked. And they give you a receipt saying your door's locked, you're good to go. And you have this comfort of saying my basement's protected, not realizing that your garage, your main floor, your upper level, your vehicles, the rest of the property is never, you don't know, right? There's no validation. There's no verifying that those are secure. But let's say your basement gets breached, or let's say another area gets breached. Oh my gosh, we need to really ramp this up. We need to go all in. To Angie's point, there isn't an unlimited budget to put a giant concrete wall around your property with, armed folks and dogs and cameras and, maybe lasers, whatever it is, to really go the extra mile. There's the answers in the middle. And if that open discussion is, hey, I really want to protect what's in my basement, but everything to get to the basement also needs to be reviewed too. Now you can have an open discussion of what that cost is going to be to add additional locks or add monitoring or to make that work. And yes, you don't have the lasers and you don't have the big wall, but at least you now have a better protection around what you're after is protecting the basement and everything to that point. And then yearly you say, all right, instead of the basement, now let's add this room, and you evolve there. And as technology evolves, as you guys know too, hopefully this becomes easier over time. And I know we knew artificial intelligence was going to come in. As new capabilities come in, it may make things easier for us. It may create more challenges as well to help us improve that ongoing report that we get to protect what we're after. And the other thing I have to say as well is that obviously most organizations are not static. They're very dynamic. So what you test today, even if you have that analogy of saying, all right, I know exactly how to protect my basement, the landscape could change within months. So that's where you have to have that conversation. I know we talked about this in the prep, Joe. What is your operational expense and your capital expense with this type of stuff? You really need to evaluate both when it comes to penetration testing, because you may have to go into some sort of automated testing on certain areas of your organization if you really want that full protection versus that snapshot in time. because the threats change, landscapes change, organizations change.
Absolutely. And the other, that's a great analogy, because that actually just happened to us in our home recently, where in our we had a lightning strike right outside of our house, and we did not know it at the time, but it fried a bunch of the electronics in our home. And one of the things that it fried was our router, our modem. And as we rebuilt our network, we forgot about the fact that we have water sensors in our basement. One of the things it fried was the condensate pump on the air conditioner. We didn't find out that that was fried until we had water in our basement. How the heck could we have water in our basement? The last time we checked, we have water sensors down there. Oh my gosh. When we reconfigured the network, we forgot to add those little pucks back into the network. So that's the kind of stuff that the penetration test will find. And I think that, AI can be kind of analogous to those little pucks. It's popping up in all kinds of places now, in APIs and in software platforms we're using, that last year's pen test didn't take that into account. So those kinds of changes, whether they come about because, something bad happened, or something new and great came into the organization to help us be more efficient, that's another one of the benefits of penetration testing. It's going to help us also find human error in configuration.
Yeah, I like how you bring up the human error part, because it's a great segue into how penetration tests should go beyond, in my opinion, just looking at vulnerabilities with systems and applications, but also testing people. And I know that pen tests in the past, there may have been a test email that was sent to see how many people clicked, and ignored their phishing training. But that goes beyond with testing today. They're, looking at protecting against SMS or smishing, voice calls, deep fakes, AI generated phishing campaigns. These are how, because of those threats, pen tests should evolve to validate or to verify that your organization and your people are educated around those. So again, if you just scope to the systems and the applications, and you check all the boxes, and you tidy everything up, but you don't necessarily challenge your people, one person letting the door open for a bad actor or a system, and it's all over. It doesn't matter how many firewalls you have and protections you have and the latest endpoint updates, they're in. So that's a big element, I think, that should be included with modern day pen tests.
Absolutely.
So now you take a look at wrapping up this year. Believe it or not, 4 months left. Whoa, can you believe it? Kind of crazy.
It goes fast.
And you brought up AI, not me. But I'm not going to bring it up again. What's the kernel of wisdom? What's the thing that you really, Andrew, you really want, and Angie, you want people to understand, whether it's changes to pen testing, the scope of a pen test, what vulnerability management means to people? What do you really want people to take away from the conversation today that is not only meaningful for them, but they can actually do something with the information that you've shared? Like, what's that kernel that they get to walk away with?
I always say trust but verify. If you're not doing a risk analysis, if you're not doing a penetration test, then you're trusting but not verifying. That's really the biggest takeaway I want people to I want people to take away when we talk about these things. It's not about passing, failing. It's not about why check the box. It's about continuous improvement and trusting and verifying what it is that you believe your information security program to be in your mind.
And I think to add to that, on the artificial intelligence side, as we're seeing more agents and our employees are using more of these GPTs, whether it's ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, or even private instances. I think my brain goes to don't trust and verify.
Exactly.
Right?
As AI, trust nothing, verify everything.
Correct. And that's where ask if you have people in your organization that have developed an LLM or they've created these agents, the question to ask them when it comes to penetration testing is, what have you done? What guardrails have you put up to protect the model from not having the data be poisoned or not having a flood of bad information be taught to this system that is now going to give bad information back to your end users that ultimately is designed to create a vulnerability. Insert scenario here. That's the concern I have is the over reliance of these tools and knowing that these persistent attackers, they could very well, nation states could very well compromise these systems. And because of our over reliance on them, we don't think anything else. We just see what's being put to us. We know deep down it might be hallucinations, but if it's a chase that way, I would want to know on the back end, how are we protecting the information that this system has, how it's learning from these types of attacks, and then how do you test that? Is that point in time, or are you going to continuously do that? And that's the answer the organization has to come up with based on how involved they are with these tools, how integrated they are, going back to the business impact analysis to your organization that you've allowed these systems to come in and essentially take over or walk alongside your employees or clients.
This is tough. I mean, based on, the last 20 minutes or so, I don't think any of this is easy. And I bring it up because I think that when we take a look at the organizations that we work with, some of the folks that are in trade associations that we work with, et cetera, this is becoming even more complicated. And maybe I'm Mr. Captain Obvious, but that says to me that people have to rely on real experts that are out there. They're not always going to have that expertise in-house. They've got to be able to find those outsourced partners to work with. They've got to pay attention to organizations that are really service driven, because they typical business owners can't do this by themselves.
No.
Somebody that is, call it 250 employees or less, or even call it 75 employees or less, they are not going to be able to do this on their own. There's no way. And so my point is, I just think that, you've got to have that community that you can tap into that's going to be able to help you, for sure. It really is.
Yeah, I think the other part, which ties back to the frequency of penetration tests, historically, let's say 2019 and beyond, or before AI really started to take shape, we got into, as technologists, more of a rhythm of understanding Microsoft was going to release updates every, say, 24 months, and then generally speaking that. So we knew that we had to apply patches, and we knew that there would be changes, and we would have to update our systems. And now we're in the cloud at this point, 2019. Many of us, even a year later, would, because of COVID, fast track to having most of our systems being automated in the cloud, and that changed the landscape of how we did pen tests. In some ways, it made it easier. With AI now and how fast it is changing, evolving, and growing, there is even more, in my opinion, emphasis to have that discussion about the frequency of pen tests and expanding the scope because of how fast artificial intelligence is evolving. The amount of money being poured into that technology. To your point, Joe, most business leaders and organizations, they don't know how fast it's moving. They don't know how quickly it's being adopted in their organization. As a result, you could have an underappreciated, underworked, or overwhelmed IT department And that is more of a driver to say, let's bring in a trusted third party to help us have a conversation about what the pen test would look like, not only today, but if we do this continuously, how that's going to potentially evolve over the next quarter. Because AI in many cases has changed even significantly here in 2025, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Anything you want to wrap up with, Angie?
No, I always enjoy chatting with Andrew. He's super smart. He's got a great big brain, and I always learn something whenever I talk with him. So it's just always a pleasure and a joy to get a chance to sit down and chat with him.
Thank you, Angie. Likewise, I always learn from you guys too.
Andrew, we really do appreciate your time. I am going to send us back to the green room, although I have no idea what has happened on LinkedIn. And I'm sure there are probably 800 emails in my inbox because there were 375 people trying to watch us. But we're going to go back to the green room and see what happens next.
All right. Thank you.